Hey,
Morning.
you can hear me good?
I gotcha.
Perfect. And I have you. Very nice. So are you at the Magic Kingdom today, or are you at your own wee office today?
In the morning, I'm currently still at home,
Oh,
but
very good.
but I will be at the quote unquote happiest place on earth when we wrap up.
Oh, very cool. Well, let's just jump right into it. I don't want to waste any of our time here for sure. And I know we're both very busy. We'll start right there. You're at home. Talk to me about not being, ensconced at home because of a pandemic, but I mean, obviously, I don't want to ask questions that may have been asked before, but how do you balance being a writer and a writer in Hollywood with having a family, being a family man, being a father?
The work-life balance is always one that is being constantly adjusted and modulated for the most efficient fuel-air mixture.
Mhm.
But like in a perfect world, I'm just a dad who goes to a job. Like I wake up, I get the kids off to school, I'll, get myself in the car and drive over to the office and then work for my 7 or 8 hours and then drive home. Um, it is really a perfect world, and it hasn't been for a stretch. So, there's still the chunks of it that I try to keep modular and steady, which is I always want to get the kids off from school, and I always want to be able to have dinner with them at the end of the night and send them off to bed. What happens in between then is the part that gets to shift. Sometimes I'm, just sitting in my home office and working. Sometimes I'm, at my secure location via WeWork and working. And then there's always a chunk that I do at night after everybody goes to bed, where I'm up from anywhere from 10 to 10:30 to 1 in the morning, just kind of grinding on stuff, the stuff that is not the day job stuff, the stuff that I didn't get to during the course of the day, reading, wool gathering, all of the weird randoms that go into trying to be a creative person for a living.
Certainly. And I mean, obviously, anyone who does it for a living doesn't romanticize it as people as much as say somebody who wants to or speaks about being a writer as opposed to actually doing it. But if you were a plumber and you drop the kids off and then off to plumbing or whatever it is that you're up to, uh, your family, your children may not influence your work directly as much as, for example, being a writer. Do you find, again, being a former journalist and before you had kids kind of thing, do you find that having a family does influence the writing, even if not for the audience, certainly for you directly?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Forgetting we're going to be talking about Adora in a second.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the process of being a writer is being very much an import-export machine, where you're trying your best to live a life in the world and be a receptor for the things that you see and you hear and you experience, and then sometimes on purpose and but more often than not completely unconsciously synthesizing that input and finding a way to put it into the work, because ultimately writing of any sort, unless it's like technical writing, is about reflecting the human experience, and finding ways to put different prisms on it that allow us to understand different facets of it. And so part of that is leading a life. Part of that is being out in the world, and so everything gets to be grist for the mill, and definitely being a parent and a husband and a father and all of that stuff becomes part of that as well. Um, and because I think ultimately you're looking for connection points with other human beings. And, what makes us, what is our common denominator? And it is by and large the lives we lead and the paths we walk. And there are aspects of that path that are the same for everybody, and there are parts that are fundamentally different. And I think finding that balance is what makes it work.
Awesome. And certainly as we speak to Adora, I mean, obviously, boy wonder Kevin, he's always talking about having many spinning. Obviously, you're talking about grist for the mill. Uh, when you were coming up with the Adora story, was the idea that graphic novel always going to be the vehicle for this, or was this something that was just, hey, going and could be a short story, could be a graphic novel, could be a series, or was this always kind of the brackets for Adora and the distance?
I think that if I had started to write Adora now, there might have been more of a internal conversation about what medium it's going to go in. I mean, I think it's perfect as a graphic novel. And the as I began working on it over the course of that time, like it seemed very, very clear that there's something about the graphic novel, the comic book form that allowed that to work as literature in a way. But it was also the only avenue I had open to me when I began starting the process about 15 years ago. You know, like I knew comics folks. I had published a couple of comic books. It felt as if like, all right, well, here's another comic book and I know the people to talk to and I can get yeses or nos in relatively short order. And so that was the path that I went on. If I was already working in TV, maybe it would have been a pilot. You know, if I was already connected in features, it might have been a movie. But I do love it as a comic book because I do love the form. You know, I love how complicit it makes the reader. And I love comic book art. I really, really do. And so to be able to just hold a thing in your hands and open it to any random page and be confronted with, you know, beauty is, I think, a really special thing. And so yeah, like it's as inspired as I am by, you know, the Sandman specifically, to be able to produce a work inspired by it and feels like it's able to sit on a shelf next to it, far away from it. Like Sandman is here and Adora's like, you know, buttoned up against the other end of the bookshelf. But even still, yeah. But even still, like it's the comic books were like my first real literature love. And so to be able to add to that canon in even the littlest way means quite a bit.
Well, yeah, and to have your name on the goddamn thing, and it's not, you know, it could be He-Man or it could be Batman, but this is obviously, you know, a Marc Bernardin story, which is to me just that other level than, you know, a vehicle of something else or something from our childhood.
Yeah, I mean, as fun as it is to get to play with those toys, you know, every now and again you want to play with your own toys, you know, and there's value there, there's validity there. Just as there is if you're writing, you know, issue 793 of Batman. If you can find the new Batman story to tell, like power to you, man. It's been 75 years of those.
Yeah. And just to stop on one facet of Adora before we jump into Splinter, the uncle character. Obviously, I mean, it's a Marc Bernardin story, so in every bit of it. But you know, how much of that, you know, I see a little bit of Alfred in that. I see a little bit of obviously Marc Bernardin. Is that something again that you just, okay, as you're putting these pieces together, you go, okay, we can have that uncle character, or in fact, is there an uncle that is that type in Bernardin land and in the real world, so to speak?
You know, there is not that uncle in my, I mean, I have, you know, uncles that I love quite dearly. But I think what it was, and of course, Uncle Raphael in the book is not her actual uncle.
Yeah.
He's her sort of, you know, not to spoil too much, but he's her adoptive uncle. You know, uncle is a sort of term of endearment more than it is, you know, her actual role. And I love the idea of found family, you know, of people who do cleave together because they do love one another, but it's not because there is a genetic bond. It is because, you know, I feel deeply for this person, and so I'm going to do everything I can for this person. And I think that, especially the older I get, the more I realize that as much as I have the family I was born with, it's the family you create in the world that is the one that you can actually, you know, that not to say means the most, because again, I don't want to cast any aspersions to like my brother and my mom. But you know, there's something about choosing people as opposed to being born into a thing that I think makes it a little bit special in a way that's really wonderful to portray. And so it's very much like, yeah, no, this is a guy who's just doing the right thing, who found this little girl and adopted her and raised her and all this stuff, and then would give the world for her, even though there is nothing legally saying he has to.
Well, and I mean, that talk about something that's infused into almost, well, certainly the big ones we all know. I mentioned Alfred, but I mean, Pa Kent is the same. You know, didn't have to look after the alien, but it turned him in.
Yeah. No, it's I'm doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely. And doing the right thing. Splinter. Other than the people thought it's and they say it's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. I mean, talk to me about. I mean, Lord knows you have a career in this now, or a second career, if you will. And the first one was attached to entertainment and movie making as well. But so you know how the sauce is made. But what did you learn when it's you in the director's chair? It's your forgetting it's on a plane. It's your vehicle.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, the buck stops with you. What did you learn in that role compared to obviously the last 25 years, or being on set with others?
Yeah, I mean, it's Kevin is always fond of saying that directing is just answering questions. That 1,000 people will ask you 1,000 questions over the course of the day, and you just have to be the person who knows the answer to those questions. And whether or not that answer is objectively right, or not, you just have to have one. And so, and it's very often like red or blue. Blue, is it A or B? B, and so the capacity to feel that amount of data in a very short period of time is it's blistering. The pace of it is so intense. But the thing that I think I took away the most from it is the biggest decisions you make are the decisions you make before you ever get to set. And that is namely, who did you hire? Did you hire people well?
Yes.
Are they good at their jobs? And if the answer to those are yes, then when you get into the middle of production and you can say, hey, what do you think? They'll give you the answer you're looking for, and you can trust them for that. Because I knew that I didn't know what I was doing, I trusted the people around me to help inform that. It's like, hey, are you happy with that take? I'm happy with it. Do you feel good? I feel good. How does this lens look? Looks great. Like it's being able to, trust the people around you to help guide you through the thing. And I think that that's probably a lesson that they'll teach you in like officer candidate school or officer training school in the military. Like if your staff sergeants are great, if your NCOs are good, if you've got good young officers, then like at some point, not that the responsibility is never yours, but you don't have to do it all. And you can reliably trust people to execute what you're looking for. And so that was the biggest lesson, was like, I didn't have to know everything.
Despite being the writer of it as well, where that is a different level, right?
Totally. And it's like I knew the story, like I knew the part of the short that I needed to protect, which was here's what it's about. And every decision should be filtered through what it's about and what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know how to hang a light, like I don't know how to capture clean sound, like I don't know how to make this 20% bluer or 30% better, like and to a certain degree, I don't know how to modulate an actor. Like I can tell them, here's what we're trying to go for. Here's what the core of the scene is. But like they're doing like tiny moves in ways that like hey, okay, great. That looks amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, very good. Hey, Ridley Scott really, I mean, obviously he would, he equates it to military. He goes, I just have to see the problem coming over the hill and then force in or knock the head off. Right.
Yeah, totally. It's and then it goes faster than you think it'd go. And it but it's great. Like when it's going, when everybody's operating at the same wavelength, when the orchestra is in sync, then it's a thing to see. It's kind of beautiful.
Well, it's a big train set, isn't it?
Yes.
And everything at your disposal. And on that note, on people you've hired, obviously the cast is pretty well known. Where are you at now in the process? And are you in the editing suite? I know, Kevin would tend to be known to edit the night of. Are you over somebody's shoulder, or are they just sending you footage, or are you well past that and you're into post now? Or
yeah, we're into post. Like we got picture lock, so we know what the short is.
Gotcha.
We're no longer, we're not cutting anything, although every time I watch it, there's like, could we do a little, like maybe that's a little too. But so yeah, VFX is being generated, and the sound designers designing sounds, and the composers composing music. And so now it's the weird like sit down and wait for experts to do their jobs and then deliver things for me to say, all right, well, that's great, but can we do a little, there will be a second stage of futzing. But right now I'm in the waiting to futz period.
Well, it is. And you'll know this as the writer and then directing it on set, and then as you're messing around with the edit, it's a completely different way of telling the same story.
Oh, 100%. Like the last draft of the script is in the editing booth.
Yeah.
Where it can be a completely different thing. And I'm always amazed at how much power there is in editorial to shape and shift, and to some cases generate story that wasn't even there before. Like,
well, and or as Kevin under-edited you, and you're just sleepy blunt fan looking right down the pipe at the camera there.
Yeah, that was Kevin's mistake.
But you know what I mean? Director's choices. No, and obviously the protagonist in this is a younger child. How much of, not necessarily it's Adora related, but how much of your family and children is making its way into Splinter, at least at that first draft stage?
It's weird. Like, it's probably, there's a chunk of my son in it, only because that's the closest proximity that I am or have been to a child of about 9 or 10, and like what that kid likes to do, what his space wants to feel like. The narrative has nothing to do clearly with anybody that I'm related to, but the lived in experience of, A, being a kid, and C, having a kid, are all very, very present in it. Like, what's this kid like? What does he want to eat? What does he, what would he like to play with if he had a chance to play? Does he want to play with other people or not? Like, what are the emotional urges of a 10-year-old? And how do those things get either sort of granted or denied? And then what are his responses to that? Like, all of it, again, goes into the matrix and then comes out as a different thing that hopefully feels recognizable, if not real.
Absolutely. I have to say, your episodes a couple years back now, I guess, or a year and a half, your episode with Malcolm Barrett is one of just, I can't call it a television moment because it's online, but I don't, whatever awards it should have won, as Kevin says, all of the awards. That was just fascinating. I get that it's live, but it's fascinating television, for lack of a better word, right? Obviously, not that he's going to replace Kevin, but what a great, fantastic guest host, and the rapport with you is just fantastic, and him not giving a shit also helps, right? But
yeah, it's I think we caught him in a good place where he was like, all right, well, this is done, and I'm doing a bunch of stuff here, but I don't have anything to a certain degree that I can set on fire by saying the wrong thing. And he's one of the smartest guys I know. He's one of the, he has this ability to jump in and out of thoughts and topics, and there's a nimbleness by which he can conduct a conversation.
Yeah, well, I'm just flashing back to him. I mean, it had nothing to do with the current events, but he was talking about Jada Pinkett and walking onto Gotham, and just that whole run was just amazing, right?
Yeah, like he's an incredibly fluid performer in every way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so and to get to just, and I knew him a little bit then, like we had been on to lunches and dinners and a bunch of group things and whatever, but that was the first time that he and I actually like got down together and spoke.
Is that right?
Yeah, like we had been friendly but not friends, but getting to know him and getting to see how his mind works and getting to just see how he can go deep in 1 second and then incredibly funny the next second.
Yeah.
At some point it becomes my job is to hold on to this conversation because I'm not steering it so much.
Well, and it's a less of a wandering dog than, say, your more regular partner sometimes.
Yeah, like Malcolm just goes fast at everything.
Yeah.
Whereas Kevin just kind of sideways ambles at stuff.
Depending on the day and where you're at the green, where he's at on the green. And on that note, I mean, he's obviously pretty 420, and is that true writers that use it for tools and many other things and many other devices as well. Is that something that you recognize? Maybe not as much as Kevin, or is it you just is that not anything you would partake in any way as far as marijuana?
I have never smoked.
Is that right?
Yeah, like other than all of the secondhand smoking that I've done with Kevin over the course of the years.
It's a chimney. Yeah,
but it's substance has never been the path or the conduit for me. Like I enjoy a good scotch. I will doff a flagon of ale if given the chance, but it has never become I gotta have my scotch to write.
No.
or I gotta be a little, I gotta be a little buzzed to get it going. And I respect any writer who's figured out their path to the creative juices. And if those juices have to be fermented, then I get it. If they have to be laced with something, I understand it. It's just never been me.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, the older I get, the better that is, because I do not handle a hangover as well as I used to.
Well, it's a health thing. Yeah. And if you're trying to keep, take care of the writer, that's still the person in the body, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, it must, again, the arc of Mark, so to speak, you're supervising, you're supervising on Picard. How does that arc feel to you when you flash back to being an intern on Deep Space Nine? Is that something that you can go, geez, what a, it's not like it's Sally Field and you've made it or anything. You're well ensconced in everything going on, but that must be a good little loop, I would think.
Yeah, it's funny how life, the longer you get to lead it, it has these natural sort of return points.
Yeah.
And some of it is simply because you have perspective you couldn't have at 22 years old. But the idea that the thing that ignited my career was being an intern on DS9 and getting to meet people and being in the process and seeing how that show is made. To then be able to return to Star Trek some 30 years later is somewhat remarkable. And it's the second time that's happened. Like after being an intern on Next Gen and then Deep Space Nine, my first TV staffing job was on a show called Alphas, which was run by Ira Stephen Bear, who 20 years prior was running Deep Space Nine. And so he remembered that I had been that guy. And the fact that experience continues to loop back into the present. Right now I'm working on a show that Ron Moore is the showrunner of. And, I had been a Battlestar fan since the jump. Like I was a fan of his work on Next Gen. I was a fan of his work on DS9. And then Battlestar is to me one of the 5 greatest TV shows in dramas in history. And then to get, and had covered it as a journalist and did a podcast about it.
Yeah.
And then to get to be in a room with that guy, and not to say we're on a level playing field in any way, but to get to throw ideas at him that he may or may not like. To just get to be a writer for this guy is a similarly, paradoxically wonderful experience of never thought this would happen in a million years, but holy shit, like here we are and we're doing it and we're in a room with Ron Moore and it's the dream of dreams, and to get to live that, it's remarkable.
Well, and not everything about it, like it's self-fulfilling and you realize it, but then it's inspiring for all other different reasons too, I would imagine.
Yeah, like it's a weird sort of, like, it's putting fuel in the tank that I'm burning right away. Yeah. It's like this, it's like cold fusion. Like it's Absolutely. Feeding on itself in the best way. Yeah.
Man. And again, it's Picard, for God's sakes. It's not B minor red shirt from back in the day, but it's
getting to write, interior Enterprise, Jean-Luc Picard walks on the bridge is a ridiculous thing to get to do.
Yeah. No, and again, right? I mean, you're of the same era where you would have been growing up listening to him say that. No, very good. So as far as when Splinter's as far as getting public, is that something you're thinking in the fall, or?
I mean, there's like a couple stages of what release looks like for Splinter. There's, hopefully we're done in June or July is what I'm hoping. We'll be able to put the final finishing touches on it, and the bow and the candles and all of that. And then there's a festival circuit, which will coincide with it going out to Kickstarter backers.
Gotcha. Right.
But public is tricky because lots of festivals won't take a movie that have been publicly exhibited.
Well, when I say public, I mean it would be festival release, not on YouTube, for God's sakes. No.
Right. Yes. The people will get to see it if they're in the place to get to see it. And then the people who help pay for it will 100% get, the first look at it before almost anybody else.
Well, I've got one same thing. I'm gonna, much like taking out of Kevin's page, I'm gonna hold on to that flash drive and forwall it before it goes, like get out of here, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, again, this is somewhat pandemic related. How much more did your career as a writer change in the day to day? Not, not what you're writing or how the hell you go about it, but meetings like this. Did this immediately become, even for something that you were gonna, whether you were hashing out a writer's room or just having a meeting on something, in the last 2 years, did just everything go online like this?
Everything was this, everything was Zoom.
Did it change in any way for you? Like,
It's weird. Like the pandemic was both a horrible personal experience. Like I, knock on wood, didn't lose anybody to COVID, but all of the reasons why, lockdown is awful. Like, yeah, I was stuck in my house and, my kids couldn't go to school and suddenly we're also teachers and like all of those things were all of those things. Professionally, it was awesome. I was able to, I did like 3 or 4 writers' rooms over the course of those 2 years and, was able to do things that I probably wouldn't have been able to do otherwise, simply because they would have been too far or too whatever, like wouldn't have been possible. And so now we're beginning to claw our way back to quote unquote how it used to be. But I think there's still going to be some vestiges of that world. And that, I don't know if you understand LA geography, but it's a weird sort of time suck, chronological vortex of how long is it going to take me to drive 10 miles? Oh, an hour? Oh, okay, great. I'm not driving that hour anymore. It's like, hey, we'll do this on Zoom. That's fine. I think pitches are going to be done over Zoom a lot more than they have been done in person. Because writers, honestly, like I didn't sign up to this to be a monologuist who's off book in a room, just memorizing 30, 40 pages of content so I can spit it back out to you. If I can sit at home and read it, and still be able to engage with an audience who may or may not want to buy it, and there's no dinging the process for that, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and I honestly, I can't argue with one bit of that. And other than some that just can't get on camera for whatever reason, I just found, not to make light of it, the pandemic hadn't hurt professionally in any way. Like,
yeah, like I got to work on a video game for the first time, which I probably would not have been able to do because I think that the people who are running the game were like, we're in the Bay Area. Like, I'm not going to go to the Bay Area for 4 months and work on a game. Like, I just can't do that. But if I can chime in from home, 3 days a week, that I can do. I can do that while I'm in another writer's room. I can do these both at the same time. Just clicking one Zoom off and starting another one suddenly allows, neural implosion, sure. But I could do them both and make it work.
Absolutely. And then on that note of getting back to the public, I mean, for people up here that Lord knows fan cons and Comic-Con and CinemaCon is not, the daily ritual up here. What are people going to see? And I mean that from your point of view, not as a fan, but as somebody who, presents on panels, obviously not just this one. And I've done this one in the past. What are people going to get? And then what are people going to get from Marc Bernardin?
In terms of what? As
far as I've been to a con, but if I haven't been to a con, what are people going to get, at your average Comic-Con, be it Northern FanCon or not? And then, from the Marc Bernardin panel, I mean, I know a little bit, your presentation will be different if you're flanked with Kevin or if you're flanked with Malcolm or anybody else. But if it's just the solo Marc Bernardin show.
If it's just me at a panel at a convention, especially FanCon, FanCon, the thing that I've started to do is a workshop, specifically about let's break an episode of television. Like, let's go in the writer's room. I tend to pick a television show that people are familiar with. I think we did Knightrider the first time. I think we did we do Airwolf the second? No, the A-Team the second time. And like, all right, let's all of us in an hour generate an episode of this show. What are the parts that we all understand? What does Michael Knight want this episode? What's the bad guy want? What's the pretty girl he's going to encounter? Is she a single mom who's got a young kid who wants this? What are the 2 things Kit is going to jump over during this episode?
Sure.
And then just put it on a whiteboard and like, here's the process of building this kind of drama. And it's been fun, and it's been a lot of fun because that's what it is in a writer's room. And it's very much, it's not me saying, here's what the show is. It's, hey, 100 people who are here with me, what do you think it should be? What do you think it should be? What should this episode of Quantum Leap be? What's Sam Beckett trying to jump out of and into? What's the problem we're solving?
Well, that's great.
And that's always super fun. It's always super fun. And then I think at FanCon again, I'm going to do another Black Man Beyond panel. I'm not sure who with, but it'll be me sort of having again an hour-long conversation with a person, and it's less an interview and more, let's just talk about stuff.
Yeah.
Like the one thing that, not the one thing, but one of the things that I've learned being next to Kevin for, at this point, almost 10 years, is the ability to just talk to a person. Like it doesn't have to be an interview. Like I'd interview lots of people, but that requires a volume of research and data and all of that stuff. And then it just let's chat. Like, either I know you and it's great, or I don't, and let's get to know each other, but let's just shoot the shit for an hour and hopefully it'll be fun.
Absolutely.
And then the thing that I always love to do is, and we're getting closer to it, is, just like shake a dude's hand, and say hello and take a picture and make a little bit of a human connection, because that's, at the end of the day, it's why we go to cons, right? Is we go to cons because we are surrounded by people who love the same sorts of things that we love.
Yes.
And if one of those things happens to be the work that you do, I would like to thank a person for liking the work.
Yeah.
Like you went to your job and you did your hours and you got paid and you decided, of the things that I want to buy this week, one of them was my comic book. Yeah. And the very least that I can do is thank a person for doing that. That feels polite.
Yeah. Well, no, you and Kevin both, separately and then together, are very good at breaking down, and I don't want to say, again, de-romanticizing it, but just exactly bare bonesing what it takes to maybe not function in Hollywood. In some cases, that is what it is as well, but it's certainly create. I certainly, you glean everything from episodes. Every time you guys pull out dinosaurs and Cadillacs, I'm screaming at you. One day that's going to get pitched, and I just want to attach to it. Like, my God. Our time's wrapping up here, so didn't want to push you too much. And you got, like you say, you got to get to the happiest place on earth that isn't your house.
Indeed.
Thank you very much, and I'll certainly endeavor to catch up with you in a couple of weeks up in Prince George.
This was a pleasure, Rob. I'm glad you reached out. This was fun.
No, thank you. And then I don't know if you guys haven't mentioned it yet, or if you have, I've missed it. I was just catching Josh Brolin's new one, Outer Range. It's slightly got some genre in it, and there's some humor as well. So good one.
Yeah, it is on the list. The list is long.
Yeah, isn't it?
And it feels as if every week I realize, all right, I should watch these 5 things, and then it's like I'm Dory in Finding Nemo, and suddenly I forget the 10 things I was supposed to watch because there's another new 10 things that I'm supposed to watch. Yeah. Too much stuff, man. Too much stuff.
Absolutely. Nope. Very good. And like I say, in 2 weeks, we'll see if we can shake those hands in person.
Sounds good, Rob.
Thank you, Mark.
You got it, man. Have a good one.
You as well. Take care.
Take it easy.